Niall, welcome.
Thanks.
You for joining us as well.
No, thank you for having me. Great to speak to you.
You once said that at Arsenal is where you learned your trade, Manchester City is where you became a footballer, and Sunderland, that's where the club really got under your skin. What did you mean when you said that?
I think the further I moved up north from London, I think the more football meant to the people. Now, Arsenal fans mightn't thank me for saying that, but what I mean by that is that in the region, in the area where you lived, in London, I think it was 10, 11, 12 million people, and Arsenal in my day were getting 30, 35,000, 40,000 at the matches. And so there was 40,000 out of the population at your game. But in Sunderland, there was 49,000 at the matches, and I don't know, what was the city, 200,000 counting the surrounds? So it was so more intense, and I really liked that intensity eventually when I got going, because I struggled at the start at Sunderland, and it was hard. It was hard to I suppose, repay the faith that was shown on me by the manager for paying all this money for me after I'd had a cruise ship. He took a gamble on me, and I thanked him by doing the other cruise ship 5 games later. So it was a difficult start, but I think what I appreciated more than anything after all the years was how the fans, when they saw that I was putting the effort in, that I really wanted to have an Indian summer and have a great finish to my career, they encouraged me and they brought me through it. And I hadn't been as close to a group of fans. Like, I got on great with Man City for a few years and the fans were great, but there was a lot of turmoil in that club and it was difficult, and I couldn't quite get the rapport that I ended up getting with Sunderland. But of course, a fella called Kevin Phillips walked in the door, and that was a huge help to all of us. And that whole sort of 6 years that I was there, despite the difficult start, I treasured it. And maybe it was because my career was coming to an end, but I loved every minute of it, and I couldn't wait to get into training every day. I'd come in early, I'd stay an hour and a half late and play head tennis, And twice I forgot to drop my kids at school, drove straight in, and they're stuck at the training ground. Couldn't bring them home and had to bring them into Eileen, who used to do the food in the kitchens, the Charlie Hurley training ground, and say, look after them till we finish training. Then I'd bring them somewhere and plead with them not to tell their mother that they didn't go to school, But that was it. And I think all of us were the same. There was a great bond in that team. It wasn't a chore. It was an absolute joy. But I was at the end of my career. It meant so much to me, and the people, it meant so much to them that we started to do well. To the point where I still, get stopped in airports and, thanks a million, Mara, and you kind of go, my sort of friends, what does that mean? I said, that's just colloquialism there for a friend in Sunderland. So they were great times from the first day I got there. Even though I had a bad start and I got injured, and we got relegated that first year. Afterwards, it was just brilliant. So yeah, and that's where that kind of saying came out. I think I finished off saying I love Sunderland, so which I did. I just loved the whole, and I meant the region as much as the club,
Before the club and the area really got under your skin, when you came from Manchester City, you must have had options, you must have had offers from elsewhere. So
not really, because what happened, I'd had a cruise ship a year or two before, and I hadn't really done myself justice in the Man City team when I came back. And in those days, if you had a cruise ship, it was trouble, Alan Shearer had recovered, but, others didn't, like Gascoigne, for instance. And it was a tough thing to know that there's doubt in the air amongst the management, etc. I'd been sort of overlooked because of the injury. So, Paul Walsh and Uwe Rosler, players like that had come in and took my place. So the last couple of years, it didn't really happen for me. And I didn't have a lot of options. In fact, I very nearly signed for a team called Selangor in Malaysia. Tony Cottee went there later, and David Rocastle, my old friend David. And at that time, that was the option open to me. And Peter Reid rang me and said, no, come up to Sunderland, And that was the call that changed everything. Great start, loved it. The club had been promoted into the Premier League. There was a real buzz in the air. And 5 games in, then I had my cruise ship. So that was, and I tried. I came back way too early after the second cruise ship, This was my second one, and I had a go in the summer to come back. Didn't really happen for me. Played the first few games, and I was on my way out at 30 years of age, and Peter Reid said, let's go and get a second opinion. The PFA had sent me my forms to quit and showed me my options. So that's the mood of where I was, and I went to see a man called Mr. Bollen in Richmond in Yorkshire. And Mr. Bollen, I'll never forget, his car registration plate was ACL1. Right, so I thought, well, this fella might know what he's on about, And he had a little look in. He woke me up afterwards and said, I've had a little look. I haven't done anything. He said, I've put something back together. I think your operation that you had is absolutely fine, but there's a couple of bits around it. See how you go. And honestly, 6 weeks later, I was perfect. And I knew I had another stint in me. And that's why maybe the Sunderland thing meant so much to me, that I was able to get back. And we didn't get promoted that year, but they had the playoffs against Charlton, that famous game that keeps coming up on TV every time I'm looking at it late at night, and they show, the heartbreak of the Charlton penalty shootout. But something was galvanising and happening in the squad, in the dressing room. To say Sacco was very important to that, Peter Reid, the backroom staff, Gordon Ellis, but the players were coming together and saying, hey, let's make up for this next year. So nobody left, nobody asked for a transfer, nobody caused trouble. We all just turned up, maybe 4 weeks later and said, right, let's sort this thing out. And that year that we got promoted was just a brilliant year for unifying a club to make itself ready to go and compete then in the Premier League when we eventually got there. And we got there, we were there, like by March, I'd say. We had the whole thing sewn up.
In terms of historical touch points as well in the club's history, the Stadium of Light stands right up there in terms of being an unbelievable home to many. It's a home to many. It's a cauldron outside of Sunderland, and you were there at the heart of the very first game as well.
Yeah, we have to give Bob Murray great credit for that. Bob the Builder, they used to call him then. He built a great stadium. There's no doubt about that, and also put all the planning in together to organise the whole thing. It was extraordinary, and the big disappointment was, of course, that we had got relegated, on the eve of going into the stadium. So to try and lift it again and make sure that we got the club back on shape. It took us, as I said, 2 years. We didn't get up the first year. We played City in the first game. I was lucky enough to get the first goal. A bad back pass, if I recall it. And Martin Margetson, who was with me at Man City for years, lovely lad, Martin from Wales, he came out and I slipped it in under him. And I didn't realise the significance of it, but even to this day, it still props up first goal in the Stadium of Light. So, an incredible stadium. There was one game before that. I think we played Ajax to open the stadium. I have memories of Status Quo, being on the stage, doing the music before kickoff, and Bobby Saxon giving it loads, like he was about 70 at the time. It was definitely a huge move for the club, a huge positive move for the club. And it took a while, but once that, as you say, that cauldron feeling came around, and particularly when we went back up into the Premier League, a couple of years later, it was just a joy and a pleasure to play there. You just felt you were going to win. You felt you were going to score. Like we played them all there. We beat Arsenal there. We beat Liverpool there. I think we beat Chelsea there. All the teams that were firing. United, I think we beat them there. And any of the others that you care to mention. So it was a time that it went too quick for me looking back, but it was a time that really was the most special time in my career. So that's when I start making statements about why I said I loved Sunderland and how it got under my skin. That's why. It was just an incredible time at a new incredible stadium. Now there was an incredible training ground being built, but I didn't get to see it because I finished before it was open. I found that when I went back how well that was built, and not surprised Bob did that. Set the standard, I think, for all clubs today.
It would be remiss of us not to mention some of the more special goals that you scored in a Sunderland shirt. One in particular being a towering header at St James's Park. Very Niall Quinn-esque, I suppose, as well. And I'm sure fans would love to hear about.
Well, it's my favourite goal, and Mickey Gray put a hell of a ball in. Alex Ray let it go. Actually, the pass that was played to Mickey to feed him. If Alex had controlled that, there would have been no goal. Mickey, of course, as he did, galloped up the line and put it in right underneath the sort of the rafters where they'd put. I think they gave us 750 tickets, and our fans were way up in that corner, and the whole place went into silence when Mickey put the ball in, and I got it past Shea. And I've various memories then after that still kind of play in my head. One is I tackled terribly against Rob Lee and gave a penalty away, but as it turns out, I ended up making Tommy Sorensen a hero because Sorensen saved Shearer's penalty and we went on to win the game. And my other memory was I came into the dressing room, after we'd gone up to our fans and we'd got into our dressing room, and I'd gone to the toilet, and meanwhile the dope testers came in and said, "You've to wee in this bottle, your number's been picked out." I said, "I've just gone." So I had to wait till I peed again, and everybody went home. The whole Sunderland players, coaches, medical, everything is gone. I'm in the dressing room on my own, sitting with these guys for about 2 hours, and eventually I got a little bit of a dribble, and it was enough to let me go. And I had a friend waiting for me in the players' lounge. He was on his own, going, "Where were you?" I said, "Sorry, you're not going to believe what happened." And we walked out. Now this is well late. This would be 2.5 hours after the final whistle. And just as we were walking out, there was a lad on his knees at the statue. I think it's situated just outside the ground, and he's crying, going, "Why, man? Why? Like, why does Sunderland beat us?" Like, you know. And I was going, "Jesus, like, look at that." And my pal was over from Dublin, he's going, "That's mad." And then all of a sudden got a tip on the shoulder, and it was Sir Bobby Robson. And he tapped me on the shoulder. I'd never met him in my life before. And it was Sir Bobby Robson, you know, and I just looked at him and he went, "By Christ, what an header, son. What an header, son. What an header." And he walked on, and I thought, wow, that was lovely coming from him, you know, even though he was the manager and they were beaten.
Obviously, you can't do an interview with Niall Quinn as well without talking about your partnership with Kevin Phillips too. Probably one of the most synonymous striking partnerships in Premier League history and English football history. How do you look back on your time with him?
I look back on the partnership with Kevin Phillips as a break that I got the day he walked in the gates of the Charlie Hurley Centre. Everybody thought it was David Connolly was coming from Watford. There was mention of other players, and to be honest with you, there was a negative reaction when Kev was the one that was coming to bolster up the striking options, you know. And today, I look back, I kind of feel a bit sorry for Danny Diccio and Michael Bridges, because they did some great stuff as well, but that tends to have gotten lost with the Quinn Phillips thing. And Kevin winning, you know, the European Golden Shoe, playing for Sunderland at that time, it's hard to work that out in many ways, but that's how good he was. And I say it to anybody who's interested, you know, like, we didn't practice together, we didn't work it out. We had a little chat maybe just before kickoff and really what it was, I said, look, wherever the ball comes from, whatever I'm doing, I'll always try and head it inside, or I'll try and hold it up or whatever. But if I'm laying it off, I'll always go inside. And Kevin had a great strength, right? He'd pretend to go one way, and he'd lean into the player and he'd move. And if that ball came to him, then he was away. And if he wasn't that good and knew how to do that, my headers wouldn't go anywhere, and I would not have looked good at all. So I would be eternally grateful to him for the player he was. His ability to score goals, which is the biggest and hardest thing in football, still is today and always will be. But his ability to appreciate what was about to happen and to get his yard and to then do as he did, whether it was outside the box with curlers, whether it was headers, you could knock them back to him, whether it was volleys, pass goals, chip goals, you know, bending them around the keeper. He had a strike on him either foot as well. It was just a pleasure, because you knew if you got the ball into him at any kind of within 20, 25 yards, something's going to happen. But there was a great few years there with Kev. I think somebody said he got most of them, but I think we got 199 between us in the few years that we were together. So I think he got about 160 of them. But anyway, it was a joy to be around him, because he never let it go to his head. You know, he got in the England squad and probably should have got more caps. You know, but Kev was a pleasure to play with and a pleasure to be with every day. You know, he was just a bubbly, infectious guy, and gave me more than an Indian summer. I suppose, him walking through the gates at the Charlie Hurley Centre added 5 years to my career. There's no doubt about that.
Just moving a little bit further on in your sort of Sunderland career, more towards the end of it, actually, I suppose, more towards your testimonial. It must have been a huge honour for yourself to have Sunderland and Republic of Ireland at the stadium in place.
Yeah.
But lots of other facets to the game. There was, you know, all the proceeds went to charity. It was announced in a very peculiar way as well, I think.
Well, so how it stemmed at all was I was due a new contract, and Bob Murray offered me the game as part of the contract, and I really felt that was him getting the fans to pay what was due to me on my contract. And so I withheld and held firm till I got what I wanted. And eventually when he gave me what he wanted, I said, "Is the game still on the table?" And he went, "Oh, come on." I said, what if we give it away and do it, you know, because nobody had done that before. So that was it. That's as far as it was. I mean, yeah, okay, let's do something like that. And Bob came back and said, "We've approached the FAI." They said they'll do it, but someone in the FAI leaked it. And without anything being planned, nothing at all, it was announced that the game was going to happen and that it was It's going to be the first testimonial ever done for charity. And that was bad enough, not being ready for that. So suddenly I had this huge monster in my hands and really didn't know what to do. I had no committee, but Peter Walker helped me at Sunderland. He was the accountant at Sunderland at the time, and a few others came together and we started the bones of a committee and worked out how we could get all this to happen, try and even get some tickets so that we could sell them like it was back in the day. There was nothing digital at the time. And we had a lovely event happened when I was getting a lot of credit for this. I received a letter from a Sunderland fan who was in jail. Some tough things that happened in his life when he couldn't go to the game, obviously. But he sent me a lovely letter saying, if you could do a non-attendance ticket, I'd love to support what you're doing. I was a bold lad, beat myself up. I can remember him saying something, I beat myself up all the time, but you're doing good and I'll do a little bit of good in here if you send me a non-attendance ticket. And that sparked an idea. The Barclays call centre up out past Sunderland on the way out to the A19 there, the people there said that they'd man telephones, and we went live with a non-attendance ticket offered, or you get a programme and a non-attendance ticket for a tenner. And lo and behold, because of that one person in prison sending a letter, 35,000 people opted to buy a non-attendance ticket who couldn't come to the game. So this was pre-digital, pre-everything, and not only did the people in Barclays man the phones, but they also helped us pack all of the 35,000 programmes and tickets that went literally old-fashioned system. The Royal Mail allowed us to send them out for free, so we weren't sending a load of money back out of the £10 that was coming. So it worked out really, really well, and the game itself was fine. It was just before our World Cup in Korea and Japan, and it was a lovely send-off. You know, it worked really well. It was a nice night, and I went off and played a World Cup. I retired then from international football a few weeks later, and was on my holidays contemplating the next year ahead. I had a year left on my contract. I had 2 years left on my contract, and I got a call from Bob Murray. Would I come away for a chat with him, bring my wife for a weekend to Barcelona? He was going over there with Peter Reid and Bobby Saxon and Adrian Heath, who were the coaching staff, and he'd like me to join them, that he wanted to talk to me about something. So we went for a weekend, and lo and behold, over there, he said, right, he said, I want to make you a player coach. I want you to be a natural successor to Peter here at the club in time. And I went, great, okay, that's I think I'll do that. That's a lovely thing, you know. And got a coaching head on me, you know, for a little while, and then came back, did pre-season. I know, was it 7 games in, he sacked Peter Reid. But it all came to a shuddering end for me then. So when Howard Wilkinson came and didn't want me at the club, I reacted very negatively to it. But that was it, you know. Sometimes you just have to accept it. At the time, I found it hard to accept. But it clouded my time there, you know, when I think of the great 6 years that I had. The last sort of 24 hours weren't so good, you know. But there you go, that's football. Everybody has those stories. He said he wanted to see me, and he left me till 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, he just brought me in. He said, they rate you, I don't. So you won't be part of my plans, but if you train with the injured players for a few weeks, I'll give you a free transfer. And that's when I went, nah, I'm gone, see you. And I came out, and that was it. I never went back as a player. And then I didn't even come in training for a couple of days. And then on the Friday, I was asked to go in, and he asked me to play on the Saturday against West Ham. And I said, how can I play? I haven't trained for a week. You said you didn't want me. He said, no, I just, you know, I've been talking to people. So I said, I'll go on the bench for you. And I went on the bench, and we got beaten, but I come on, and I did well. I knew I played well when I come on. And but I was raging, absolutely raging at this point. My coaching career was gone to shreds. Manager didn't really want me. So I can recall going up to the boardroom after the game and knocking on the door saying, I want to see the chairman. And John Fickling came out, who was the vice chairman, and said, he doesn't want to see you. He knows you're in bad humour. Look, he'll see you during the week. And I went, he won't. I'm gone. Good luck. And I never went back. And John said, Niall, look, you know, I said, no. And I said, and John, and another thing, I'm going to come back and I'm going to run the club properly. And he went, yeah, well, look, if you get your coaching thing. No, I said, nothing to do with coaching. I'm going to run this. I'm going to come back and take over this club. And I walked out. And he went, yeah, well maybe so, Niall. And he went back in. Probably had a giggle about it, but 3 years later, it was there.